Hello, everybody. Welcome along to the Event Industry News podcast. The podcast is kindly sponsored by Visit by GES, our smart event solution partner. For more information on Visit by GES and its smart event solutions, head over to visit.ges.com. So, as always, a very good morning, afternoon, or evening to our podcast followers, wherever or whenever you may be tuning in to us from. Don't forget to stay up to date with all of the latest content from eventindustrynews.com by downloading the Event Industry News app, available for all the major mobile devices, and follow us on Twitter. You can do so using @EventNewsBlog. On today's episode, we're going to be talking to one of the winners of this year's Event Technology Awards. Abbott scooped Best Hybrid or Live Streaming Solution at the event in London just a few weeks ago, and the company is less than 2 years old. To tell us about what it is that they do, why they scooped the award, and what it is that they are bringing to the industry is founder of the company, Maarten Vaneste. Maarten, very good morning to you.
Good morning, James. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you very much indeed. So we're just a few weeks on from you winning Best Hybrid or Live Streaming Solution at the 2017 Event Technology Awards. I suppose the obvious question is then, to start with, what is it that Abbott does? What service do they provide, and why was it relevant to that particular category at the awards?
Well, Abbott is actually a little older than 2 years, actually 30 years, but the product that we're talking about today is a new division, it's a new product, and it's multi-hub meeting. So before that, we've been into the audiovisual technology, meeting design, creative production in the meetings business and the meetings industry for many years. So this is a new product, and it's I think really great that we won this award. So thank you for inviting us again here to talk about it.
Yeah, no problem at all. And I suppose in some respects, the category subject that you won, Best Hybrid or Live Streaming Solution, suggests straight away that you're doing something that relates to live streaming, to video technology, to conferencing, and the multi-hub part of your own business, again, leads us down a certain path, and perhaps people will be painting a picture. So what do we, if we were to utilize your service then for our own event, what would we see, and how would that work, and where does the multi-hub come into it?
Yeah, so the service is bringing together groups of people. So you have to think like in a video call, like for example Skype, but then normally you have individuals. So what we do is bring in groups together, and bigger groups, up to 20, 40, 80 people in several cities at the same time. And so the service that we provide is to connect those groups in video and in sound in what we call a high density connection. So this means that all participants can speak and be heard by all other participants, and that they can see each other, and that we can zoom into any individual that is actually asking a question to the speaker or interrupting the speaker to say something or whatever happens. So it's about bringing groups together. And we have several cases in a presentation that I'm going to share on the screen here about how that looks. But I think there's a few essential things, if I may, James, to describe why this is so different. So number one is the fact that it's groups, and so you don't have to travel. You know, you could be a group of doctors in a hospital, and you just stay in the hospital, and you go to this meeting room where we have set up, and you're connected to 5 or 6 or 12 other groups of doctors in other hospitals around the world. So that's a very convenient way of going into medical education meetings, for example, in this case. Mm-hmm. And so what we do is we've actually worked very long and hard in selecting and standardizing the equipment. And so what you see on the screen here is actually backpacks. You know, it's the backpacks that our technicians take when they go to Hong Kong, or when they go to Lahore in Pakistan, for example, which is happening next week. So that's a standardized package of equipment, and the technicians sometimes travel with a little more than just a backpack. Here you can see a guy with 2 suitcases. That's for the bigger groups. If you have 18 people, we actually provide everybody with a push-to-talk microphone. You know, one of these guys that's on the table here. And
sure.
and so everybody has a microphone within arm's reach. So it's a little more equipment and a sound system and projection. It's all in those suitcases. And then, this shows you an example of such a meeting. It's really, this also shows, this picture, that it's quite easy and affordable to do, because this is cafes in this little town here in Belgium where we have office. I mean, this is just 8 cafes plus the city hall where the quiz master. This is a quiz. It's just a quiz with 250 participants, 50 teams in 8 cafes around the market square in our little city here. So that's really very easy and affordable to do. It's not like complicated or expensive stuff. So it starts at a real interesting price point as well.
I suppose at this point, Maarten, if you don't mind, I think what's important is to maybe paint a picture of your own background and how this particular product was born. You mentioned that Abbott as a company is actually quite an established company, 30 years old and audio-visual, but this actually multi-hub meetings product and service is relatively new. Why was there a desire to actually bring this service to market? Who had the idea, and why did you think you could compete against other video conferencing technologies that were already in the market?
Yeah, I think video conferencing is obviously well established, and the tool that we are using today is also used by many people in many meetings, and so there's nothing secret or new about that. I think what it is that we've done is we kind of went out of the box, thinking about how can we set up such a multi-hub meetings. They've been done before. I've heard about several cases in several countries where they've done multi-hub meetings, and they've done larger groups, like 100 or 200 of people, 200 participants in one room. But then, it's like big cameras, and it's like £100,000 per location. That's just okay for a one-off, for a big event, for a real corporate once a year, let's all get together type of event.
Oh, yeah.
But that's just not the kind of price point that a lot of people in like conferencing and education, etc., and training can afford. So I think we felt that there was a need, specifically with one client, that kind of stimulated us to do this in medical education, to do this fast and cheap and easy and affordable. And I think that's what we came up with, and that's the big difference of working with traditional equipment and the traditional setup. So it's been a huge investment as well in lots of equipment, all the same and exactly the same equipment, and then having technicians that just start from one point and fly to all these places around the globe. I mean, that's, I think, a solution to a problem that is becoming bigger and bigger, in the sense that people don't want to travel if it's not really necessary. There's a cost in travel. There is a lot of out of the office time, which is really expensive in the case of, for example, oncology surgeons. And there's lots of good reasons to do this, but it's quite challenging and complicated and expensive if you do it in a traditional way. And I think we cracked the code there and created something new.
And in some respects, just as you explained that, with the technicians actually taking the equipment to them in these, what look to be very, very efficiently designed and engineered backpacks with, they turn up and everything that they need is in there. Instead of 10 people flying from one destination to a meeting destination, you have one person flying there in order to deliver the equipment and set up the meeting. So straight away, you reverse engineered the process.
Yeah, so it's 10 people that don't need to travel, but then 5 times 10, or even 5 times 20 people that don't need to travel, because we have 5 cities. For example, in this case on the screen here, that's one of our extreme cases, and we have 3 of those in this presentation. This is 4 cities. You have Buenos Aires, you have London, Hong Kong, and Seoul in South Korea. Those 4 cities each had like 20 surgeons, and they were all into the same very specific stomach surgery, and they were very keen to get together, but they were presenting cases. It's like a 2-hour meeting. How can you do a 2-hour meeting for surgeons that are so far away from each other? I mean, you could do a webcast, but that's kind of That's not what the client wants. People want to be together, they want to talk to each other, they want to be live, they want to be face to face. And this is the closest thing to face, obviously. You can't fly people from Buenos Aires for a 2-hour meeting to London and back. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So either you do a 2-day meeting, which then takes them out of the office for 4 days, or you do a short meeting in this way, where nobody actually travels. These guys went to the meeting before their workday, 7 to 9 o'clock in the morning, and these guys were still in their white jackets, and they come to the meeting after their workday from 7 to 9 in the evening. So that's a 12-hour time difference, which is an extreme example of what multi-hub meetings can do.
And so in that particular example, you've got 4 hubs, I suppose, is what we would call them, isn't it? Because it multi-hub meetings, so each particular location is classed as a hub. In terms of the scalability of the system, is it infinite in terms of how many hubs you could have at any one point, or is there a limit to how many people you could have, all talking to each other at once?
Yeah, so those are two questions, and very good questions. I mean, here you see an example of 6 hubs, and we call it a hub because in each hub there is the hub, and there is all these participants are connected to one user in the video call, and they're all being filmed, and they all have microphones. They're all connected to this single point that is now, for example, in Leipzig, this video, and so everybody is connected to that hub, and then multiple hubs, 6 of them, are connected to each other in a video call. This is a situation where you see groups, you see close-ups of some people, you see the actual chair of the conference introducing, you see more groups of people, so there's like 20 people in a U-shape in every location. So that's an example of 6, and this is the pictures of those 4: London, Seoul, Hong Kong, and Buenos Aires, where you can see people sitting in the hospitals, and they're still wearing their white coats, as you can see, for their work. It's on the job training almost. But your question is a good one also. I mean, the number of people we've done, the most people we've done so far is like 100 people in one room, and our promise for multi-hub is that every individual has a microphone within arm's reach. It's not a wireless microphone that somebody has to bring, because that slows down the process. And we want everybody to be able to stand up and say something, and in this case, it would be using those push-to-talk microphones, and everybody can actually say something whenever they feel that they have to. So that's a promise. The second promise is we make a close-up of everybody that's speaking. So therefore, right. I think our limit lies around 80 people, but you can obviously, beyond that, you can add observers, additional people that could sit in the back and watch what is happening. So that's kind of the limit for a number of people per hub. But if you look at the number of people, the number of hubs, actually, I mean, this is another case where you can see 18 dots in Spain. So this is a single country, and we have 18 hubs here. Some hubs have 10 people, some hubs had 60 participants, and for example, in Barcelona, we had 60 participants. In this case, there are speakers in 2 locations. The blue hub, the blue dots here, Valencia and Barcelona that's where the speakers are. Again, a short 3-hour meeting, but 18 hubs in total, 350 participants. Instead of bringing all these people together in, for example, Madrid, which would take flying and traveling and train rides for most participants, and it would also bring down the number of participants, because they had 350. Normally, they would get 100 to 150 people, 150 people at most, because people don't want to travel for a short presentation to the capital of a country like Spain. So that is definitely an advantage as well. You get a bigger reach for your desired audience.
And when each of these hubs, goes live, is the technician that you've sent out with the equipment also staying on site there to do things like zooming in and zooming in onto the people who are speaking? Is that all the technician's responsibility to do that? And therefore, if you've got 18 hubs set up in one country or around the world, you need 18 technicians to deliver that.
Yeah, absolutely. So here, in this case, we had, you can see, here's a close-up. Here's like 5 people in a shot. Here's the whole room in a shot where you can see 60 people. And it's really important, I think, to have that closeness. I mean, that is psychologically an important factor about which I think we need to talk more and discover more. But the psychology of being together in one room is huge, and if you can get as close as possible to that with multi-hub meetings, I think that's important too. So here, indeed, you have 18 technicians. They actually walk in the morning, set up the equipment, do the work of operating the equipment. I mean, they're helping with the tests, they're helping with speakers, etc. But then do the work during the actual meeting, and then they break down and walk away with the equipment. So it's like it's all in one day. If you have like a short meeting, 3, 4, 5, 6 hour meeting, set up in the morning, do the tests, bring in the speakers for some rehearsals if you want to, start the meeting, end the meeting, break down, and go away. So you don't need to rent a room for 2 days. It's just, you know, a one-day event, and that's also an important factor of the price point that we can offer at this moment.
And I suppose when you go back to referencing things like the medical examples that you gave earlier on, that they perhaps are not actually having to source an outside venue as such. You know, many of these businesses will have, and if you're talking 8 to 10 people in a company, it might be that they can use their company conference room or a venue that they've actually got available to them anyway without having to outsource to a bigger venue.
Yes, that is. I mean, that is something that also needs some thinking and work to be done. I mean, of course, the people that book venues love this. They have to book 18 venues for one meeting, you know. So that's a lot of business for them. But on the other hand, if you look at the price per delegate, there is in many cases people pay a daily delegate rate. So if you have a one-day meeting, you pay €100 per person, including the dinner or whatever, or coffee breaks, etc. So whether you put those 350 people in the 18 rooms or in one room, the price point is close again. So there's not a lot of difference, unless some hotels might charge a rental fee for a meeting room. Obviously, again, if you're in a big ballroom for 350, that's going to be a higher cost than renting renting a single small room. 18 of them may be a little comparable in cost, but that is logistically it's an interesting topic as well. And it's also interesting to see the registration companies that are not ready for this. If you set up an event, you can choose a venue or a city or a time zone, and a ticket, not a ticket for London and a ticket for Buenos Aires and a ticket for so a lot of that adjustment and a lot of changes need to happen in the industry before we're all ready for this. I'm not sure it's going to explode, but I think it's a growing format. It makes a lot of sense, so I think it's going to grow. I think we all have to get ready for this.
Have you had any indication or feedback from clients and users as to the level of productivity that's achieved as a result of meetings that are conducted in this way by comparison to the productivity achieved by holding a traditional meeting whereby all of these people would fly to a destination? Do they find that the productivity is the same, better, or worse?
Yeah, I think you need to look at the different components. I think there's 3 main components in designing meetings and looking at objectives and reaching those objectives. Number 1 is learning. Number 2 is networking, and number 3 is the pleasure, the enjoyment of being in such a face-to-face meeting. So I think first of all, the enjoyment. It's a lot of excitement that people have when they come to a multi-hub meeting because they've never seen it. Today, it's still exciting, and people are amazed to see that it's so flawless and it really works well. If you look at these 4 rooms here, there's four of the 18 rooms, and they're all set up in different ways, big groups and smaller groups, and they all have a lot of fun because, interaction is a very old topic. We've been talking about interaction since 1984. That was the first time that somebody talked to me about interaction. We need more interaction in this conference. But it's still there today in normal conferences. We don't have enough interaction. And in this, obviously, it's the same deal. It's important to have some interaction. It's important to have a presentation followed by some small group discussion. And surprisingly enough, this example with the 18 cities in Spain, there were 4 speakers. And so 2 speakers did their short presentation, and then there was a 5-minute local discussion. So each of those groups had their local discussion. So we switched off the central sound, and everybody could just talk to each other, and they still would see everybody else also talking to each other in small groups.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of a very a nice example of the fact that you actually can make multi-hub meetings interactive, just like you have to work on normal meetings to do that. And obviously the networking. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that appears to be a very much a replication of what would happen in conferences and in meetings, certainly that I've been into in the past, where you would have a presentation or somebody would address the entire room. And then in a traditional meeting, if you have round tables of 10 people, they would say, right, we're now going to break for 5 minutes, and we would like you on your individual tables to discuss what's just been said and then give us your feedback as individual tables, which is being replicated with this system by allowing each hub the opportunity to discuss and debate what's just been said and then give their feedback when everybody comes back online.
Absolutely, and that is such an important moment for every meeting, and it can also be done in multi-hub meetings. Because if you look at this here, there's like 60 people here, and they're all at round tables, so they're in small groups. And smaller groups are a powerful thing in meetings as well, because people are okay to talk in small groups more than standing up and speaking for a large audience. So it's better for people to be in small groups and have small group discussion rather than have a Q&A where there's one person talking, usually the same person always. So small groups are good, and it's good for networking. Although some people may say, it would be better to have the 350 people in one room so you can see everybody, you can network with everybody. But hey, can you really talk to 350 people in a good way in a 2-day program? That's a lot of people to talk to. So building a relationship in a small group is easier and goes faster and lasts longer than when you have just these many short conversations with many people in a big group. So, networking value is also there, I think, and maybe more importantly in this case, the networking for the local representative. Because, in each of those cities, there is one local representative. For example, in Oviedo or in Granada, there is the local representative invites his clients from Granada and has them, in his own bubble for like 2-3 hours, including dinner or plus dinner, and he can really have good conversations with them. So that's kind of a super plus for the networking for the local representative in this case of 18 different cities.
And I guess as well for the delegates and the attendees, there is less pressure than there would be if you were being thrown into an environment where there are 300 other people. That there is inevitably that pressure that a delegate feels to actually try and get round and meet as many people as they possibly can in a short space of time. Whereas without that pressure, if they're in a room with 20 people, they feel like they could be perhaps a bit more productive by introducing themselves to 19 other people than trying to get around 299 other people.
Absolutely. And if you stay in a small group for a while, you get to know each other a little bit, so the trust level goes up and you can share more and hear more and learn more from other participants as well. So I think that's quite a powerful plus for multi-hub meetings and for smaller groups. The next case I'm actually having on the screen now is last year's Fresh Conference. This was taking place in five cities in Europe. Poland, Belgium, Holland, the UK, and Portugal. And this is a 2-day program. That's a big extreme as well. So we looked at the time zones, we looked at high numbers of hubs. This is another extreme. It's 2 days in an online program. I mean, it's very hard to imagine. People tend to try to be short, when it's a webcast, for example, when you're solo viewers, like everybody's watching their laptop and consumes the presentation like that. It's quite a painful process. You have to concentrate, you have to stay awake, you have to, you're alone, you can't talk to people, there's no small group discussion, there's no coffee breaks, etc. in groups. So it's a very different experience, and being 2 days in a webcast is probably kind of impossible. But here, we had a 2-day program, and we had very positive feedback. Nobody felt like this was really too long, and if they were in London, for example, they had a local dinner in the evening as well with some people. So there was like lots of positive news on longer programs, which I think is great as well, because this is something that we need to experiment with. Do participants accept a 2-day program? Do they feel a 2-day program in a multi-hub meeting is okay? And it seems, as far as we could see at the Fresh conference, that is actually the case.
And when we say 2 days, how long are we talking exactly in terms of the hubs being live and interacting with each other? Are we talking a full 48 hours, or are we talking about the working day 9 until 5 and then coming back the next day and doing a similar thing?
It's it's really a full day program, like a normal conference. You have your speakers, you have your discussion moments, you have all of those things. Like in a normal conference, you have coffee breaks, you have lunch, and of course, in a 2-day program, it's easier if people have the same time zone or roughly the same time zone. So that's kind of what we have here, except for Portugal and London. Lisbon and London were on 1 hour time difference, but that's okay. We could manage that. The time difference is fine for a 2-day program like this. And sure. What we also have seen is that you could do a 1-day program. One of our clients has done a 1-day program with 5 cities, I think, and they had a morning program was their local program with their local speakers, and there was no connection with other groups. And then they had lunch, and then in the afternoon there was a joint multi-hub session where all these cities now were connected to each other and were like more keynote level speakers, etc. So we can be creative with programs in the same way almost. And you can be creative with programs in normal single venue meetings.
Absolutely. Going on to the actual technology and the logistics of delivering each hub. And I suppose a good example would be to look back at the case study of where you had Buenos Aires, you had London, I think Hong Kong and Seoul, all linked together across multi-time zones. When you go to these different venues, and you mentioned that you're going to, I think it was Lahore very soon as well, how does the actual connectivity differ from place to place, and how are you able to research that in advance? Because presumably you must need a good connection in order to deliver the service, and if you're working globally in all of these different locations, how do you ensure that you're going to have the actual capacity to deliver your service with the connectivity side of things?
That's a question we get a lot, because we've done some research. We have 300 respondents for a survey, and it's like 80% of them say that the technology and the internet connection is the biggest worry, the biggest fear of doing such meetings. But we have shown that it actually doesn't need to be such a difficult situation. I think it's quite clear that when you do the right testing up front, which is done remotely with a local technician, that you can already know for sure that this connection will be working. So there's bandwidth, there's stability, there's lots of little tests that we do in such online test that we do. It's a standard procedure, just like the equipment is standard and always the same. We also do the same test for every venue, and so we get a say in acceptance of the venue. That's new. So if we feel that a certain venue is not up to speed with the speed of the internet, then we will say so, and we will have to. We cannot approve such a venue. Now, once a venue is approved, we guarantee that it's going to work. So we also have backup. We always bring backup. We always have like a 3G, 4G. Option to switch to in case there is anything going wrong with a normal connection.
Absolutely, and I guess we've been having the conversation about connectivity quite recently on a number of different occasions on the podcast, and for regular watchers and regular listeners that they'll know what I'm talking about, where we've spoken about Wi-Fi issues, we've spoken about broader connectivity issues, and how it's becoming a critical part of the criteria that is set when selecting a venue. And it's surprising how long I think it's taken to creep into being a critical part of the criteria. Many meeting planners and people who book venues like a venue because of how it looks, because of the quality of the catering, maybe because of the the comfort of the facilities, and often the actual testing and the connectivity issues is something that was never really given much thought. That they always relied on the actual stats given by the venue itself to guarantee, here is our connection speed, and there were no actual tests done on it. And I think not just with your own company, Maarten, but more and more people now are conducting actual tests and actually analysing it themselves, so that that critical part of a venue's infrastructure is able to deliver whatever it is that they need. And I think this is, for you, it seems like it's the absolute number one thing on the list when you are helping a client to select a venue.
Absolutely, it's crucial. I think what we usually need when we walk into a room is electricity, a cable, because we don't use Wi-Fi, a cable connection, and a screen on the wall. I mean, everything else we bring. So I guess the cable connection is really the most important piece, and testing that is essential to be able to assess a venue and approve it for multi-hub meetings. So that's a very valid point, James. And I think, many of us have maybe been to one of the industry's events, one of the bigger events recently, and it still seems to be an issue. If you have 10,000 people in a hall somewhere in a big convention center or an exhibition hall, then it still seems to be like a challenge to get all these people the bandwidth that they need and the connections that they need. So I think there's still some work to be done, but usually we tend to see that in 100 hotels there's like 2 or 3 that we would find difficult or hard to approve for multi-hub meetings, but it's a low percentage. So we still do the testing. I think it's still essential to do it, but there's a very low number of hotels that are not able to do this. And by the way, we do prefer hotels to work in because they're open 24/7. You can get some local support. They usually have decent bandwidth, etc. So for us, for multi-hub meetings, I think hotels is very good, and so the hotel industry can sleep on its on both ears, because many people think, these digital meetings, the business is going to collapse, but I don't think so, because if you look at multi-hub meetings, it's 18 hotels, it's 350 people instead of 150. So the whole industry. The whole hotel industry has got 200 more people in that meeting instead of 150, they have 350. So it's smaller groups. Yes, I see that, but in general, the economy, the business, the industry will not suffer for multi-hub meetings. I think it's the other way around. It's gonna grow, because this enables new types of meeting. Look at the ones with Buenos Aires and Hong Kong. These type of meetings just didn't happen in the past. So now there is new business for hotels, and I think it's good news for the hospitality industry as well.
And I suppose that moves us on nicely as we approach the end of today's episode, is talking about the future. And when we look at the premise of video conferencing as an idea, I suppose it's very, very simple. You're connecting these hubs using video, using live audio, and you're using a good internet connection in order to link all of these hubs together. So in essence, it's quite a simple idea to understand, isn't it? But presumably there's an awful lot of things that you can continue to do going forward in order to make it more productive, to make it logistically easier to set up, as the cameras become smaller, as microphones, as the actual hardware scales down. There must be scope for you going forward to refine this even further.
Yeah, and we're experimenting. I mean, the next Fresh conference is end of February 2018, and we have Switzerland and Denmark, South Africa, and the UK, 4 cities this time, and we connect for a single session to Philadelphia. So that's new. We're actually connecting 2 conferences. This is an independent conference of about 300 pharmaceutical and medical meeting professionals, and they come together in Philadelphia, and we have a single joint session. So we send a crew or a technician with the equipment to that conference and setting up a multi-hub meeting there as a 5th hub just for a single session. So that's another potential application. To join certain conferences, like the meeting industry conference could connect to a conference on education, for example, or a conference on science and psychology. So we could do some interesting work there, and then Fresh is going to happen. It's going to do another experiment, which is the Spider Hub. So you have to imagine in each of the hubs there's a red table, a blue table, a green table, and a yellow table. And so you could go and sit at the red table, James, if you wanted to go to the red table because of that topic, and you would be connected to, on a screen like this size, to 4 other red tables in Copenhagen, Johannesburg, Switzerland, and London. So you'd be talking in a small breakout group, and you would see all the people and hear all the people at those tables, and the people at the green tables would also be in the green table meeting, seeing the people at those green tables in the other cities. So it's kind of a new way of organizing breakouts with actually 4 multi-hub meetings that happen at the same time. So we're experimenting. We're learning a lot from these conferences, and I'm trying to put all that stuff in a book that's coming out by, when we're doing Fresh in 2018. We'll have the book ready on the book on multi-hub meetings.
So this is meetings within meetings. So it's starting to sort of not implode on itself, but actually you can take the technology and actually dive down and split it up within an actual hub itself.
Yeah, so it's kind of difficult to get your head around that, but it's once you've seen it, it all falls into place, and it really gets exciting, and it gets clear, and it's really it's a matter of being creative with the technology, and I'm sure we'll find out more about other options and possibilities in the future as we move along.
And tell us, if people who've been watching or listening to today's podcast want to find out a little bit more about you, tell us how they can get in contact and where they can find out more information about the multi-hub meetings service.
Or we could say just go to multihubmeetings.com. That's kind of a simple way, and there's some contact details. There's a little more videos there as well from people that were at such a meeting. So there is, and obviously, if you really want to learn, you have to come to the Fresh conference, because that's where you can experience a multi-hub meeting, and that's the only way to really understand it and to be confidently able to explain to your customers how this works and what it is, because seeing is believing.
And on that note, it brings us to the end of today's episode. We've been talking on today's podcast with Maarten Vaneste from Multi-Hub Meetings. The company scooped Best Hybrid or Live Streaming Solution at the Event Technology Awards down in London just a few weeks ago. And Maarten's been giving us a little bit more insight as to what the service actually does, what the system does. And as I said a few minutes ago, in essence, it's very, very simple. But these guys have taken what is, I suppose, a simple idea and made it into something that sounds like it's transportable. Logistically, it's easy to set up, and it sounds like certainly there's a huge future for this particular element of the meetings and the events industry. Maarten, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us today. As always, the Event Industry News podcast is sponsored by Visit by GES, our smart event solution partner. For more information on Visit by GES and its smart event solutions, head over to visit.ges.com. Don't forget to head over to eventindustrynews.com to check out all the latest news from the various sectors of the broad event industry. And the Event Industry News app is also available for all the major mobile devices, and will keep you up to date with all of the features and content that's going out onto Event Industry News. We will wrap up today's podcast episode by saying thank you once again to our guest, Maarten Vaneste. Maarten, thank you very much for your time today and for the insight and some of the stuff that you've been showing us on screen. It's been really informative. As Maarten said, head over to his website if you've got any questions and any more information that you would like about that particular service. And for the time being, we will wrap up this episode. Thank you very much for your company, as always, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Event Industry News podcast. A very goodbye to you.